Hi, and welcome to Lynetta and Ted, our Philippine journey. I'm Ted, and Miss Lynetta, the beautiful half of this duo, is not going to be with us today, so you're stuck with me. Sorry. You have a Filipina Fiancée. Now what? Well, I can tell you this much. You got some paperwork in your future. So today in this video, we're going to take a brief overview, a brief look at the steps or the paperwork that's required to go from fiancé to wife, permanent resident, and ultimately maybe possibly U.S. citizen. So that means we'll be taking a look at the I-129F, the I-485, the I-751, and the N-400. But like I said, this is a brief look. We're not going in depth, in detail on any of these forms. We're going to do that in videos where we look specifically at the form. But before we get started, we're going to do a little disclaimer here. I am not an immigration lawyer. I'm not a lawyer of any kind. I'm not an immigration service. I'm not a visa service. I am not giving any kind of legal advice or immigration advice to anyone. I'm just a regular Joe that's passing along to you what I learned in my process of doing this for Lynetta and I and for two of her sisters. So do your own due diligence, dig in, do your research, study, and learn what you need to about this process so you know what to do. And you have two options. You can hire a visa service. If you've got the money and you don't mind to spend it, and you don't have the time to do this yourself, or you just simply don't want to fool with it, you can hire a visa service or an immigration lawyer to do the paperwork for you. And this will take off some of the stress and take away some of the work that's required to do this. Having the visa service do this for you, it's not going to eliminate all of your work. You're still going to have to come up with the documents, birth certificates, passports, the evidence, and the information they need to fill out the forms. You're going to have to still come up with all that. So it's still going to be work that's going to have to be done. But it will take some of the stress, will take some of the work off of you. And if you don't have time, like I said, and you have the money, you don't care to spend it, a visa service would be the way to go. If you're like me and you like to do things yourself, then you can DIY it. I knew nothing about doing any of this when I got started. I just simply did a deep dive into learning it. I used YouTube and primarily one other website called Visa Journey to gather the information I needed to do this. Now, one thing I will mention real quick on YouTube and or Visa Journey is be sure the information you look at is current, that it's not old and outdated. Some of the stuff I have looked at on Visa Journey is kind of outdated. It's still good enough to get you by. Just keep that in mind, that there may be some changes in the forms. But that's your two options. Do it yourself or hire a visa service. I did it myself for Lynetta and I did it for two of her sisters. So the first part of the paperwork, the beginning of this journey, is the I-129F. This is a petition for a fiancé. It's known as a K-1 visa. This is filled out and filed by the U.S. citizen. Now, they will need help from their fiancé on filling this out, because the first part of it deals with the U.S. citizen and then it deals with the Filipina. So it will take two of you to do it. Actually filling out this form probably will take an hour, maybe less. Might take you a little bit longer. It depends on the person. It's not really a big deal. It's not hard to fill out the petition. The hardest part is the evidence that you have to come up with. When you gather all of your evidence that's needed, and they tell you what you need. You're going to need birth certificates, passports. You get all of that together into the package. You're going to file it with USCIS. which is U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. It's USCIS.gov. This is the website where you will get it from. They have your forms on there. See the I-129F, there's the I-485, there's the I-751. All the information you need, all the forms you need can be found there. They have the instructions. You download it, you fill it out. You can fill these forms out online and then print them. You'll fill out the petition with all of your evidence, and you're going to send it into USCIS Service Center for your area. For Lynette and I, this was Vermont we sent it to. And sometime between when you do the I-129F and it being approved, the Filipina is going to have to fill out a DS-160 non-immigrant visa application. This is done online. The Filipina is the one that's supposed to fill this out. It can be done by the U.S. citizen, but when you get to the area for the online signature, it has to be noted there that it was who it was done by. This form is not needed until the interview, because when it's completed and uploaded, it will generate a barcode that the Filipina will need at the interview so they can pull up the DS-160 information. All right. I-129F is submitted and sent into your service center, and when they receive it, they go through it and they look at it just to see if it appears everything is there that's needed. And we're going to do this on the positive side. So they go through it, everything is there. They're going to send you a notice of action stating that they have received it and they're going to process it. This doesn't mean anything's been approved, no visa's been granted. It just means they will process it. Now the waiting game begins. This process here, just to get the I-129F approved, can take several months. Lynetta's, in my case, it was 7 months. In Lynetta's second sister we did this for, it was 18 months. Now in her case, it was COVID had interfered with a lot of it, but you don't know how long this is going to take. When the I-129F is processed by the service center and approved, they will send a notice of action to the U.S. citizen saying that it's been approved and that it is now being sent to the National Visa Center. The National Visa Center will process it. They will send it to the U.S. Embassy in Manila. Since we are talking about the Philippines, that's where the embassy is at. When they receive it, they go through it. When it's time for it to be processed, they send out a notification saying, hey, this is eligible for an interview. The Filipina will receive one. The U.S. citizen will receive one. Before the interview, a medical examination is required, and it can only be done at St. Luke's in Manila. Now, they're telling you on their website that the medical needs to be scheduled and done 2 weeks prior to the interview. This is a big change from when Lynetta did hers. She arrived in Manila on a Sunday, her medical was on a Monday, and her interview was on a Friday. So she was there for 6 days, maybe 7, before she actually got the plane to come back. So that's a big difference. I think they're not doing the interviews as often now, and that's one reason that it's taking this long. But when the medical is done, they send the information to the embassy. The Filipina will show up at the embassy for the interview. They will conduct the interview. The interview is not that big a deal as long as all of the paperwork is in order. That is the #1 reason for these interviews to be failed. That doesn't mean that you're going to start back over from square one, but it means it's going to be delayed because you're going to have to correct whatever the issue is. So be sure that everything that is required, and they tell you what's needed. And usually this is paperwork that the Filipina had to get together and have with her for the interview. because everything that was submitted by the U.S. citizen here in the United States, they have that. So normally it's stuff that was not given to the Filipina to take to the interview. So be sure you have everything, and your interview will go off without a hitch. Because any of the questions they ask in the interview is from information off the I-129F and the DS-160. So there's not going to be any surprises or gotchas in this. They're not trying to make it fail. Everybody stresses about the interview. I did, Lynetta did, her sisters did. Everyone I know that's been through this process, they really worry about the interview. And as long as all your paperwork's in order, it's not a big deal. Now the interview goes through, the visa is approved. The visa takes 5 business days to process. They will send it to the Filipina, to her address via courier. And the courier is only going to give it to the Filipina or to another person that the Filipina has designated to be eligible to receive it. That's not a bad idea in case something happens that the Filipina is not there that day. Have someone else that can receive it that you're pretty sure will be there. After the visa is received and it's put in their passport, they get it back. Then you have to have a pre-departure orientation seminar, also known as the CFO, Commission on Filipinos Overseas. The seminar is a requirement. They're not allowed to leave the Philippines without the seminar being completed. They will put a stamp in the passport. It's not a big deal. It's not expensive. It takes about 4 hours in theory. And after the seminar is when they recommend that you do the tickets to go to the Philippines. Now keep in mind, when this visa, K-1 visa, was approved, you've got 6 months, 6 months to use the visa. So purchase your tickets. She arrives in the United States, Customs and Border Patrol, check her documents, let her into the country. Now you have 90 days to get married. And keep in mind, the K-1 visa is a single entry visa. Can only be used one time to come into this country. So when you get married, if you plan on doing a honeymoon, don't leave the country. Lynetta personally knows a Filipina that got married. They went on a honeymoon out of the country, and she was denied entry back into the United States because the K-1 visa had already been used. Don't make that mistake. After you get married, you are going to have to file an I-485. It's the adjustment of status. It grants a 2-year conditional permanent residency card, aka green card. Along with it, you have to file an affidavit of support. And it looks like they would have done this affidavit of support prior to this point. The affidavit of support is to prove that the U.S. citizen has the financial means to support his now wife. There's no additional charge on this affidavit of support, but it has to be done. When we do the video on the I-485, we will talk about the I-864 then and the financial requirements. You will send this in with the affidavit of support and your supporting evidence to prove that you got married, which is going to be your marriage certificate. You're going to show the passport, the visa, the entry stamp for the United States, all of that good stuff. This is really not that big a deal on this part because the evidence that's required is really not that much. You're just proving the fact that you got married and you did it within the 90 days, and you married the person that's on that visa. So when they receive it, it's the same deal. They're going to go through it. It appears everything's there. They send out a notice of action saying that it's been received and it will be processed. Nothing has been approved. But Their stay has been extended now. They can stay beyond that 90-day visa. The I-485, it might take a year for it to be processed. Could be less, could even be more. But their stay has been extended and they're allowed to be here. After you receive the notice of action on the I-485, you'll receive another letter for biometrics. Biometrics, you'll go to your USCIS center in your area to Immigration Services. For us, it was Birmingham is where we went. Go there and get this done. They take fingerprints and photographs, and that's all there is to it. Never took long for Lynetta, us having it done in Birmingham, and it's not a big deal. The I-485 finally is processed. There is the possibility of an interview being done at this point before it's approved. I know of no one that has had an interview, but it is a possibility, so keep that in mind. Ours, it was approved, and we got the notice of action that had been approved, and then Lynetta got her 2-year conditional green card. Now, you can take a little bit of a breather, sigh of relief that things will settle down for a little bit. But during this 2-year period of time, you've got to come up with evidence to prove that you're in a bona fide relationship. So you can file the I-751 before this 2 years is up. It removes the conditions and it grants a 10-year permanent residency, aka 10-year green card. Now they give you specific things that they want to see as evidence of this marriage to prove that it's real. They like to see a mixing of income, of finances, meaning like with Lynetta and I, as soon as she had a Social Security card, she went on our checking account. She wrote the checks from then on for the 2-year period. Today we write very few checks. Then everything we paid up a check so she could write the check. I had her name put on the deeds to the properties we have. I had life insurance, had her down as my wife and the beneficiary of the life insurance. She was put down on all the bills. It's things they list that they want to see. We did those and we went above and beyond that. Because you don't want it to get denied at this point in time just because you didn't come up with what you needed to do it. So the I-751, when you send it in and they receive it, they send back a notice of action saying, here it is, we've received it, and it's going to be processed. 99% of the time there's an interview on the I-751. Lynetta and I had one. Her sister, the first one we did this for, she didn't have an interview. So it's possible for this to be granted without one. But I would count on an interview because it is the most common thing to happen. And the interview is not a big deal. They give you the chance to do more evidence if you want to present more evidence. And they asked us, they didn't look at the additional evidence we brought. She just asked, we brought it, and he told her yes. She asked what it was. We told her, never even looked at it. She asked, I think she might ask me one question. She asked Lynetta 2 or 3, and boom, it was approved. Lynetta had a 10-year permanent residence card, aka green card, and oh, it's over with for a while. We can relax and decide on the next step. Lynetta had always said she wanted to get U.S. citizenship. So that was our next. But it wasn't something we had to hurry up and do because we only needed to get it done before this 10-year green card expired to save the expense of renewing it and then getting citizenship afterwards. And because she was married to a U.S. citizen, she was eligible to apply for citizenship after 3 years of permanent residency. Well, that 2-year conditional counted and the time in between. But we'd been married for over 8 years, about 9 years before she ever applied for U.S. citizenship. And it's an option. You don't have to do it. Lynetta knows people that have been here for 20, 30, 40 years, and they've always just renewed a green card. they've never gotten U.S. citizenship and don't plan on getting it. So it's not a requirement. Don't have to do it. It's a personal choice. I think there's advantages to becoming a U.S. citizen, but it's up to you. But that'll bring us to the N-400. That is the application for naturalization to become a U.S. citizen. This is probably the easiest one to do. Lynetta agreed with me on that. You're showing, been here legally, and when you got married, how long you've been a permanent resident, so that you are eligible. There is an interview, and it's not a big deal either. The questions they ask in regards to structure of the U.S. government, the Constitution, and whatever, all those questions are published online, so the Filipina can look at them, study them to know the answers. They asked Lynetta 2 or 3 questions, and that was it. They want to see that you can speak, read, and write in English. And Lynetta had her interview, and her U.S. citizenship application was approved. They scheduled for the ceremony, which was Lynetta and a whole bunch of other people. It was all done at one time, and she became a U.S. citizen. And that part of the journey is over with. Don't have to ever do anything else. It's done. Immigration is now out of your life, and she is entitled to everything that a U.S. citizen is entitled to. So now what has all of this been costing? That's the fun part. Now, these prices were accurate as of July of 2024. This won't be uploaded until into August of 2024. All these prices should be good through this year. They normally don't update prices until after first of the year. The I-129F, the first petition you're going to have to file, is $675. The interview in Manila is $265 US. Now the medical that has to be done at St. Luke's, the price increases on August the 19th of 2024. Prior to that, the medical is 18,540 Philippine pesos, which is roughly 338 US dollars at a 55-to-1 exchange rate. And the exchange rate is higher than that at this moment, but it fluctuates, so I did not put down the US dollar amount. Starting August the 19th of 2024, that medical exam is going to be 28,650 Filipino pesos for a wonderful price of 521 US dollars, again at a 55-to-1 exchange rate. So that's something to look forward to. The DS-160, there is no fee for doing that. The I-485 is the most expensive thing that you're going to do, and why it is so expensive, I don't know, because it's almost double of a 10-year permanent residence card, and this is only for a 2-year conditional. It's $1,440. Now, biometrics is required with this, and that's not figured in this price. That's another $85, give or take. The affidavit of support that is filed with this, there is no charge for that. The I-751 for the removal of conditions and the granting of a 10-year permanent residence card is $750. Biometrics, again, is required. That'll be an additional $85 or so. The N-400, $760 plus biometrics. So all those forms together, you're looking at roughly cost of $3,625 in 2024. Now, if you're just starting this today, you won't get all this done in 1 year. This takes a while to get done, so the price will vary. Normally, these forms don't go up a whole lot, but they do go up, and not always every year. Above those costs that I have listed, there are additional fees and costs that you're looking at. You're required to have met in person within the last 2 years of when the I-129F is filed. So the U.S. citizen is going to have the expense of traveling to the Philippines. That's the most common way this happens, and generally speaking, the only way it happens. Chances of bringing the Filipina to the United States for this in-person meeting is slim to none. Now, Lynetta's second sister that we did this for, because of COVID, the Philippines not letting foreigners in, she ended up going to Dubai, I believe it was, so her and her fiance could meet in person. But generally speaking, you're talking about the U.S. citizen coming to the Philippines. So you have the airfare for your stay there, the hotel, food. We had an engagement party. That's not an uncommon thing to be done, so that could be another expense. Transportation while you're in the Philippines. Transportation there really is not that bad. And if you're a U.S. citizen like I was, I didn't have a passport, so I had to get a U.S. passport. Now, along with the medical and the interview in Manila, as in Lynetta's case, she's from Cebu, so it was round-trip airfare to Manila, a hotel while she was in Manila. Now, she did stay a couple of days with family, but she did stay the majority of the time at a hotel. Her transportation to get around in Manila, and food to eat. And this cost is generally for 2 people. Lynetta went and a cousin went with her. This for safety reasons. And everyone I know that has done this, it's been the same thing. It was not just Lynetta. Everyone I know that has done this, it's always been 2 people. So that's another expense that you're looking at to add to all of this. None of this is all at one time. This is spread out over months or several years. So it's not that bad. But this is what you're looking at. Something else that I think you need to keep in mind is that when you get married, the Philippines expects you to report your marriage back to the Philippines. It's $25 to do it. All it is some paperwork that you send in to the U.S., to the Philippine Embassy here in the United States. That's for your area. For Lynetta and I, it was the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. Now, we knew nothing about doing this until we were going to go to the Philippines on vacation. And this was 8 years after we got married. So Lynetta's passport that was issued to her was only good for 5 years, so it had expired. She could not get a Philippine passport in her married name without this report of marriage being done. And because we waited so long to do it, because we knew nothing about doing it, we had to pay an additional $25 for an affidavit stating as to why it was not done within the 1 year. And it was simply we didn't know. So instead of us paying the $25, we paid $50. Lynetta and I have a son, and they expect a report of birth to be done. There are advantages to doing this even if you never plan on returning to the Philippines, or she does. There's still an advantage to reporting the birth. And the report of birth can't be done without the report of marriage. It's only $25, and it's simply mailing in the paperwork to the Philippine Embassy in your area. And it grants rights to the child because the child by birth is a dual citizen. They're a U.S. citizen because they were born in the United States. They are a Filipino citizen because they were born to a Philippine citizen. But it has to be reported. It's not a big deal. It's not expensive. It's well worth doing because, like in the case of our son, he is a dual citizen. He has the right to a Philippine passport. If he decides, and we're going to move to the Philippines when I retire, he can own land in the Philippines. I cannot. Lynetta can own land because she is a Philippine citizen. Lynetta is going to get dual citizenship in 2025. Lance will get his Philippine passport in 2025 when we go there to do Lynetta's dual citizenship and apply for her Philippine passport. So when I retire and we move to the Philippines, I'm the only one that's going to enter the Philippines without a Philippine passport. Lynetta and Lance both will have theirs, so their stay is easier. I will have to have a visa to stay there. And I plan on doing the 13A visa because I'm married to a Filipina and it's a permanent residence. It's a lot cheaper than renewing the visitor visa all the time and a lot less hassle. So this sums up, this is a little bonus here at the end on that. Sums up my video on this. I hope it has been informative. I hope now you have a little better idea of what to expect. I am going to do videos on each step of this process, the I-129F and all of them. We will go in detail on it. We'll even do them on the report of marriage, the report of birth. So thank you for watching. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe so you'll know when these other videos come out and when we do future videos. Again, thank you and hope y'all have a blessed day.